Hello and welcome to Todd Talk, where insight meets inspiration. I'm your host, Todd Hiller, and I'm an author, speaker, and longtime community leader, here to guide you on a journey towards fulfillment and balance. In every episode, we'll explore ways to fill life's emptiness, helping you uncover practical tools to create harmony, purpose, and happiness. Whether it's thriving in your career, nurturing personal growth, or simply finding joy in the everyday, Todd Talk is your space for real conversations and actionable advice. So let's thrive together, personally, professionally, and beyond. This is Todd Talk, and I'm thrilled to have you here.
The other day I put a rock in my pocket. And even saying that out loud sounds kind of funny. But I did. I was out in my yard and there was a rock on the lawn and I didn't want to hit it with the lawnmower. So for whatever reason, instead of throwing it into the woods, I just picked it up and I put it in my pocket thinking I'll just toss it in the driveway when I walk back around the front of the house. And I didn't do that. I went the whole rest of the day with this rock in my pocket, and I kept thinking oh, it's still in there, go get rid of it. And I was like, I'll do it in a minute. And then I went inside to make lunch, and I said, oh, it's still in there, I'll go get rid of it in a minute. And after I'll do this, I'll get rid of it and let go of it. But I didn't let go of it all day. It was always in my pocket, and it got me thinking about all the things that we carry during the course of a day that we might not need to. And the more I thought about it, I think I've done this with other things too. I have carried things around at the farm that I didn't need. A big heavy tool, a big pair of pliers in my pocket, weighing my entire, pocket down and kind of tugging at my belt. But I won't take it off. Oh, I'll use that in a minute, or I'll go set it down in a minute. And it really kind of got my brain thinking too, well, what would that really do to you if we carried around something all day we didn't need? If I asked you to carry around a bucket full of water all day that you didn't need, about 5 minutes in, you'd be like, excuse me, friend, I'm not carrying this anymore because it's heavy and I don't need it for anything, and it's sloshing water all over me, and I don't want to hang on to it because it's heavy, and I want to set it down. But we pick it up because we need it for a moment. We need it for a second. We need it for a purpose or a job or a goal. And then we set it down. But imagine carrying it around for the next 8 hours, even once we were done with it. At some point, somebody would ask, hey, why are you still carrying that? If you saw someone out standing in line to get ice cream and they were holding 2 5-gallon buckets of water, or, they had a 2x4 on their shoulder, you would probably wonder, what are you still doing with that hanging onto your body, while you're out getting ice cream? And it sounds silly when we say it like that, to think of someone in line for ice cream with this giant board on their shoulder, or someone carrying 2, heavy buckets of water. But sometimes we do exactly that with our emotions. We pick them up because they're real and they're valid, and we need to feel them, and we have a reaction to something, an emotional reaction to something that happens or something we hear. But then we carry them for far longer than we need to, and far longer than they were ever meant to be carried. So the idea here of this episode is never dwell on things that can't belong to you. All right? Anger isn't yours. Failure isn't yours. Frustration isn't yours. Loss, resentment, all those things, they are not ours. We can't own them. So if we can't own them, that means we can't hold on to them. We can't keep them with us forever because they're just experiences. And not just experiences. We'll just say they are experiences, and they are visitors and moments in time. And yes, emotions are valid. They're very valid, because I've said before in lots of episodes, we can't control how we respond or how we react and how we feel emotionally, right? We can control our reactions. We can control what we do or what we say. But that feeling, that gut feeling that happens, that emotional reaction, is a subconscious emotional reaction when something happens to trigger that feeling. But they are visitors in moments in time. They were never intended to become permanent roommates. They were never intended to stay. So you can acknowledge them, and you can acknowledge them and look at them and work through them and feel them without building the rest of your life or the rest of your day around them. You're allowed to feel every emotion. You just don't have to move it into the master bedroom, so to speak. And I think people sometimes, the collaborative and collective we as people, we begin identifying ourselves through difficult experiences. I'm angry. I'm a failure. I'm broken. I'm frustrated. I'm unlucky. Get this happened and this happened and this. And we kind of hang our hats on all the things that we've lived through and been through. Now, really quick line here that I want to make sure I point this out. All the things that you have survived and lived through, and all the hardship and all the anger and all the frustration and all the loss, those are absolutely important because they are things that have built your character and things that have done really, really great to make you the person you are. And all those are important, and I'm not saying that those are not valid. But the contrast comes in with, instead of saying I'm angry and I'm a failure and owning it, you can say something like, I'm experiencing anger, or I'm feeling angry, or I experienced a failure, or I'm walking through a difficult season. Those don't define you. Those are a moment in time where you can say, hey, at this time or at that time, this is what I was going through, and this is what I pulled out of it. Because the first set, if you say, I'm angry, I'm a failure, I'm broken, I'm unlucky, the I, you start to own it, and you start to build it into your identity as a person. And the second way, when we say things like I'm experiencing anger, I'm experiencing failure, they allow you to recognize reality without surrendering your identity to that overarching feeling and that emotion of anger or frustration or failure or resentment or whatever the case may be. And because, how do I want to say this? So what you experience shapes you in many, many ways. And what you experience builds your character. But what you experience is not necessarily who you are. Somebody who experiences frustration or frustrating circumstances or loss or anger or things to make them feel like they can never get one step ahead, sometimes those people are still super resilient. They still pick themselves up. They still move on. They learn from the loss. They learn from the anger. They harness the frustration and they move on through it. And that allows them to shape their character, but not identify who they are. A person who experiences lots of loss in their life, they are not a loser, and they are also by no means, on the other side of the definition of the word, the idea of loss, they are also not someone who needs to say or needs to identify as, oh, I'm someone who's always going to lose no matter what. You can be resilient and push yourself through. Some of the best and brightest and most beautiful and strongest and resilient and well-spoken people I have ever met have been through some really, really difficult things. Losing loved ones, losing a job, losing a career, battling a really crazy, awful, difficult illness. And they didn't let that define them who they are. That's not the person that they are. That's just something they went through and experienced to help shape the person they've become. And the attention trap is something we've talked about before. And this is where I think we get into trouble. Because if we focus exclusively on uncontrollable things, we create a really dangerous imbalance because it's not something we can control. If you say, hey, I'm going to focus on just the bad things that happen in my day, or more importantly, I'm going to focus on just the bad things that I can't control, think of how, out of control you will feel when you throw all your good energy at something that is not going to change no matter how hard you try. Things like the weather, or things like other people's actions, or things like a loss or a death in your family or your circle of friends. No matter how hard we try, no amount of energy is going to change the things that are out of our control. And this spans lots of different categories and has many different scopes. Something like what somebody says about us, a mistake we've already made, a decision someone else made that had an impact or an effect or an emotional impact on us, an opportunity that you miss, a loss you can't undo. I've been through this before. A couple weeks ago, I wanted to apply to speak at this really cool event, and I looked at it, I'm like, oh, the deadline passed. And for a minute, I was like, oh, I'm going to beat myself up about this because if I had only looked sooner or if I'd only gotten to it sooner, I wouldn't have missed the deadline and I could have applied and yada, yada, yada. But I can't change the fact that the deadline went by. I can't roll back the calendar and make it a different day. I don't have a time machine. I can't go back and say, it gets to be 2 weeks ago now. I just missed it, and now I have plenty of time. I have 2 weeks to get it in. I can't do that. So I can't let that define me as the guy who always misses the deadlines, or the guy who always screws up, or the guy who's never going to be able to, apply for anything ever again. I can't let that define me. Those things have already happened. So allow them into your life for the brief moment of dealing with them and feeling them and figuring out how to move past them and move through them. But don't stay there forever, because focusing your energy and trying to control uncontrollable things will spin you out of control in a real big hurry. And the more attention these things receive, the less attention remains for everything else. Your family, your goals, your health, your purpose, your next step, your career, your business, your best friend, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your kids, whatever it is. If you give all your energy away to the things you can't control, you have none left or very little left to give the energy and attention to the things that really, really matter, the stuff we want to actually focus on. Because when your hands are full of things you can't control, you don't have room to grab a hold of the things you care about, right? If we have all this junk in our hands that we don't need anymore, the rock that's been in my pocket all day, and now I want to put my truck keys in there, but there's not room for them because this big honking rock has been in there all day. Now I have to find something else to do with my keys. My kids and I are out on a walk, and my daughter finds a beautiful flower, and she says, "Can you please pick this up and carry it?" And I'm like, "Oh, sure, except I've been carrying these 2 buckets of water all day, or I've had this 2x4 in my hands all day." And I know those are really silly, extreme examples, but think about that in the term of attention and of the things that matter to you, like your loved ones and your friends and your family. Because if your hands are full of all that stuff you don't need and all that stuff you can't control, how on earth are you going to grab a hold and savor the things that you can control and the things you want to spend your time on? And so I think a really good visual analogy for that, I'm a visual person. Imagine a piece of rope, okay? You are hanging from a rope. One hand is hanging on to things you can't control. The past, resentment, anger, regret, the situation that already happened, the fight you had 2 weeks ago with your best friend, whatever it is. All kinds of stuff that we can't control. The weather, the fact that it rained on your parade, literally, or it rained on your event, or it rained on your wedding day, or your best friend moved, 3,000 miles away, whatever it is. Imagine that rope, and you're hanging onto that, and you have all that stuff in one hand. The other hand is trying to hold on to your relationships, the opportunities you might come across, the peace in your life, the growth you want to have in your life, your ability to spend time with your friends and family, and eventually your grip starts to weaken. Not because life got harder, not because things got heavier, but the duration that you're asked to hold on to them for, and also because you keep deducting strength to things that could never support you in the first place. So you have to make sure you have the ability to hang on to and grab a hold of the experiences and the things and the ideas in your life that you have some control over and that you want to focus on, and let go of all the stuff that you can't focus on and you can't control. And ask yourself, hey, what am I hanging on to today that isn't helping me in any way, shape, or form? What is it that's in my hands? What is in my pocket, like that giant rock that's taking up all this space and doing me absolutely no good? How many things am I juggling and holding up and trying to keep in the air like balloons or juggling pins, when in reality I really should let go of all of them and only focus on the couple that I actually can't get up off the ground and can't hang on to? And the idea of, like I said in the beginning of the episode, that those emotions and those things, they can't belong to you. This can also shift towards the hope and the ownership of the things that do belong to us. So I said we can't own anger. We can't own resentment. We can't own frustration. If that is all we ever put back out into the world, think of how terrible that will make us feel. If all we ever focus on and all we ever put back out in the world is the ugly things that we can't control and the bad things that we can't control and can't change and can't get a hold of, one, it will make us feel terrible. And also, when people look at us or look to us, if that's all they see, they will forever see us as that. That will become their identity. Oh, God, don't talk to Todd. He's the guy who's always angry. He's the guy that's always frustrated. Oh, he's never in a good mood. All those things become our identity and get woven into the fabric of how other people see us. Now, on the flip side of that, think of how cool it is that there are so many things that we can control and that we have ownership over. Something I think a lot of people struggle with sometimes is feeling out of control, especially when we get busy. We feel like we're spiraling out of control and, oh my God, things get so overwhelming and get so busy and I don't know what I'm going to do. But remind yourself the things that do belong to you, your character, your integrity, your effort, your kindness, your choices, your perspective, your growth, your ability to love your loved ones and spend time with them, your ability to be kind to people and project kindness forward, always, 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 and to be grateful and thankful for the things you have. You have control over every single one of those things, and that's where you can really start to carve out a beautiful character for yourself, and you can start to carve out a really wonderful shape of you and what it means to be you, one, to yourself, and two, to other people around you, and also to be the best version of yourself, especially when no one's looking. I have always said that we are the most true version of ourselves when no one is around. We sing off key louder, we dance, we do all the things that we say, oh my God, I could never do that in front of people. But that also holds true with character and the things that you do on a daily basis. And if you do them when no one is around, and you do them when you know you're not looking for praise, or no one's going to see you and catch you doing something great and pat you on the back, if those are the things you do, then that's great and that's fantastic. And you're putting those best things forward and being the most true and authentic version of yourself. If you are a person, when no one's around, that is mean and vindictive and angry, that is who you are projecting no matter what. And that's not a good thing. So be really mindful of that and be cognizant of all those things. Like I mentioned, character, integrity, effort, all the kindness, all those things that kind of add up. We can control those, and that's what we can use to define who we are and define our character and take ownership of. So try to spend less time trying to control outcomes and more time developing the person who meets those outcomes with kindness and resilience and their best foot forward. Because, all those things I just mentioned, your character and your effort and your perspective, those are really worth investing energy into because they can actively shape your future. Fretting about the weather or being angry about something someone said is never going to change your future, and it's also never going to change the present. It's already happened. We can't go back and undo it, even if we want to. We can't go back and say, this situation was terrible. I wish it never happened. That happens to us a lot. I think everybody listening right now can probably think of at least a dozen situations you wish had never happened, whether they were embarrassing, whether they were frustrating, whether they were painful, either emotionally or physically. We all want do-overs. We all want a chance to say, hey, I want to do this differently, or I want to do it again. That's okay. And I think, like I said, everybody listening is going to go through that in some way at some point in their life. But there are so many things that we can't own when it comes to our identity and our emotions and who we are and how we define ourselves. And to be quite blunt, why would we want to? Why would you want to control and hang on to something like anger? Why would you want to own anger? Why would you want to own resentment and frustration? Those are things that I hope in my day are fleeting if they happen at all. I don't want to spend my day being angry or feeling resentful or being, just basically upset and ticked off at the world. I don't want to do that. I want to spend my life feeling grateful and identifying as someone who is always kind and always willing to help. And if you do this the right way, if you do this with some balance, you don't have to deny your difficult emotions. I'm not asking you to do that, and I'm not suggesting you do it either. Difficult emotions are really important because they bring up that feeling. Our reaction to those difficult emotions and those big emotions is important, but you don't have to deny them their time in the sun, so to speak. You can feel them. They are part of the human existence. They are part of every single one of our days. They are part of our life. But what we can do is we don't have to build a home inside all of those things. We don't have so we don't have to pretend they don't exist. We don't have to deny them, but we don't have to take up shop and pitch our tent in there and hunker down and stay there forever. We don't have to hitch our wagon to the angry, the frustrated, and the resentment of the world. We shouldn't at all, as a matter of fact. Not just we don't have to, but we shouldn't, because that's going to always bring out the same type of thing. I had a history teacher in high school who used to say, war begets war, begets war, begets war. And when we asked him what he meant, he said, I meant exactly what I said. And so negative emotion is a lot like that. If you look for the angry and you look to define yourself as an angry person or the person who always loses or the person who's always a failure, that's exactly what the universe is going to give you more of. And even if it's not exactly that coming your way, that's what you're going to pick out of every situation because it's so prevalent and right in the forefront of your brain. You're going to think, oh, I'm always losing. I'm such a loser. Everything I try, I lose. I never can get ahead. I never can win. I never can gain anything. You will apply that to every single thing in your life. You'd be walking down the street and be like, oh, found a penny on the ground. Turns out it was fake. It wasn't, I couldn't even win a penny, free penny on the ground. You go to a raffle and you buy some raffle tickets and your number doesn't get called. You don't automatically become a loser or someone who's never going to win just because no one called your raffle number. That's one specific instance at one moment in time. And is it frustrating? Yeah, it's frustrating to drop $25 on raffle tickets and not ever get a prize called or win anything. But that doesn't mean for the rest of your life you're never going to win. It also doesn't mean that you're a loser by any means. It's not the track record that you're going to set forward. It's not the track or the trajectory that your entire life is on. It's just something that happens at that moment in time. So we feel it, we work through it, and then we move on. And I think an important distinction here is ask yourself the question, what is one thing you've been carrying that you were only supposed to experience? What is it about your day? And there's probably a lot of things. What is it about your day or about your week that you have been carrying and you picked up willingly and maybe not knowingly, and you're carrying it, but you were only supposed to experience it? You were only supposed to say, oh, here's this thing that happened. It's a moment in time. It's a moment in my day. I feel it. I've gone through the emotional part of it. I've moved on. I've worked through it. And now I can cast it off and come out the other side. Because it shouldn't be a bad day if something bad happens. We've talked about this before, too. A day is a really long time. 24 hours is a really long time to go through things. I can almost promise that every single hour of a 24-hour day is not terrible, and it's also not the same as any of the other 23 hours. Now, maybe a couple are the same because you're at work and you're having a pretty monotonous day. Things haven't changed much. But even if you have something bad happen in one day or something frustrating, that doesn't define the entire day. You can have a bad moment. You can have a rough chapter. You can have a bad stretch of road. All those things are possible, and all those things are okay. But that doesn't need to carry over throughout your entire day. So feel what you need to feel, learn what you need to learn, and then set down what was never meant to belong to you. Set it down and leave it there. Because if it's not meant to belong to you, if it's not something we can control, we don't want to carry it around all day like those 2 buckets of water or the rock in my pocket. We just don't. We want to get rid of it and set it down and make room for all the things in our life that we do want to focus on. Because the more tightly you cling to things like that, to things like anger and regret and frustration or loss, the less room you have for your purpose and the growth and the gratitude and the joy that are hiding in every day. And sometimes, yes, they do hide, but you have so much less room for those if all you hang on to and all you grip so tightly is the things that were never meant to belong to you, like all those negative emotions we talked about. And I think as we close and wind down, you guys, unfortunately, I think we all know someone that will come to mind immediately if we say, hey, who are those people in the world that just project all those negative, awful things that they don't own or can't control or can't have any ownership over, like anger, frustration, resentment? And I know I can name a whole bunch. I can name people who I think they're more happy being unhappy. I think that it makes their whole day. It's what they cling to and what they really want to focus on. I think they're not happy unless they're unhappy and there's turmoil and something's going wrong. And I understand everybody is different. And I also understand that the way I'm wired is typically very happy and very upbeat and very outgoing. And I understand that not everybody is like that. However, I don't know how someone can be so awfully angry all the time and think that that's not how they're going to be perceived in the long run by all the people around them. And I think we've seen these people too. You have this person that's always angry and always just spewing the awful words or the tasteless jokes or the bad, frustrating, comments or remarks or the woe is me stories. And then when somebody says something like, wow, gosh, you sound like you're having a bad day, or what crawled up your skirt, or whatever the phrase is, and they're like, oh, well, what, you think I'm in a bad mood? And they get super defensive. And it's like, well, if you weren't so awfully negative and angry all the time, people wouldn't assume that was your natural go-to resting character. Everybody has the occasional bad day. Sometimes we even have a couple bad days in a row, and it's been a lot, or, oh my God, it's been a week. But clinging to the things that we can't own and clinging to the things that we can't control, especially the negative things, are really going to start to take a toll on you and your character if you don't learn to set them down and let go of them. So set the buckets down. Take the rock out of your pocket. Cast it off. Throw it away. Drop the heavy tools. Put the 2x4 down and go get your ice cream. And put them down right away. Feel them when you need to feel them. Experience the emotion. Control your reaction, like I've always said, and then get going and move on. And don't stay there. Don't, like I said before, don't move into the master bedroom of anger just because you feel like you should be there because you want to be angry about some stuff all the time. Let it go and move through it because there's a whole beautiful, wonderful world waiting for you on the other side of all those negative things that you can't hook your identity to and hitch your wagon to, so to speak. There's beautiful things waiting for you. You just have to be willing to let them in and to look for them and to let go and set down the things that you really can't control. My friends, thank you so much for lending me your ears and listening and following along with this podcast. I appreciate your time, your energy, and just following along with my entire journey. It's wonderful to see new followers. It's wonderful to see new listens. Come find me on social media if you want to. I am at Todd W. Hiller on Instagram and TikTok. If you need a speaker for your event, an MC, a host, you let me know. I'd love to talk to you, love to collaborate with you, love to figure out how I can help you if that's something you ever need. Be well wherever you are in this world. Take the best care, and have a great rest of your day. Thanks for tuning in to Todd Talk. If you've liked what you've heard, please go ahead and subscribe and follow along so you don't miss any updates or new episodes. Thanks very much and enjoy the rest of your day.